Hello and welcome to the program. Today we shall focus on drugs, arms and insecurity as a major factor engineering social misdemeanors amongst youthful population in the country, and as well as consequences of such heinous practices on the social well-being and economic stability of the country. The connection of drugs and arms to the state of the nation's security has created a wide vacuum for critical stakeholders to permeate through a thorough process of addressing some of the dangers imminent to the promotion of national consciousness and a productive future. Now, the level at which these progressive elements spill out violence in communities, states, and the nation is attracting attention of authorities as Nigeria occupies top position in the proliferation of firearms, intake and trafficking of hard drugs, and the security consequences have reached a monumental proportion. The scenario that played and is still playing out in the wake of abductions, terrorism, secessionist movement, and murder all point us to the negative influence of drugs and unauthorized use of firearms, breeding a generation with huge security and economic burden on the nation. These are some of the challenges we shall be discussing tonight with those who know to provide solutions to the crisis many would prefer to refer to as a time bomb. I am Omini Odan. Welcome to the program. But first, let's take a listen to this background report put together by Ismail Musa.
More than 12 billion rounds of ammunition manufactured annually, 857 million small and light weapons are in circulation. 70% are in Africa and in the hands of criminals. Large number of these are said to be in Nigeria.
The problem in Libya and those terrorists or insurgents who are moving from Syria, from Afghanistan, most of them are finding their way back into Africa, and majority are now coming down southwards. The problem in Chad is an indication that people who are manufacturing weapons in Nigeria, whether you like it or not, add that to what is happening in Mali, what is happening in Burkina Faso, or what we call the G5 Sahel.
This scenario, according to experts, is worrisome following declaration from different security agencies that most criminals are youths and operate under the influence of illicit drugs and substances.
Apart from insurgency and terrorism that has been there for some time now, we have emergence of other crimes such as banditry, kidnapping for ransom, and other forms of social unrest like IPOP. All of these have symbiotic relationship with drugs. Now, what we need to understand is that drug influences these atrocious activities. We have seen a lot of cases where kidnappers, bandits were arrested, and part of the ransom they seek for were also drugs.
You have youths who are not engaged, who are idle, and if the saying that the idle land is a devil's workshop, is anything to go by. They can be used for anything. Now they're in possession or can easily get illegal weapons. And anybody who is under the influence of drugs, illicit drug, will have lost human feeling. And so the person is ready to commit any form of atrocities.
Youth's involvement in the self-destructive act is daily deflating Nigeria's dominant productive workforce.
The GDP of this country is affected heavily because when there is a reduction in productivity, when there is no agricultural production going on because of insurgency, because of insecurity, because of kidnapping, obviously it's affecting the same economy.
The National Drug Survey of 2018 indicates that 14.3% of Nigerians are into drugs, thereby amplifying criminality in different parts of the country.
It's one of the first things that has been responsible for any nation's inability to achieve the set goals.
To curb the ravaging social vice, NDLEA has upscaled its operations, comprising raids on illicit drug barons and users in the country. In recent times, the federal government is deploying measures and strategic approach to nip the proliferation of arms to curtail their impacts on the security and society.
In line with the requirements of the United Nations and the ECOWAS protocol on proliferation of small arms and light weapons, The government has set up the National Center for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons, which is at the moment under the auspices of the Office of the National Security Advisor. And the essence is for it to work in partnership with other key stakeholders, the wider, international community, so that we can nip the issue of proliferation of small arms and light weapons.
As the nation renew its commitment to defeat growing cases of violence perpetrated by arms and drugs, what will be the expectations of Nigerians in the coming days? These are some of the questions to be addressed by experts on NTA Tuesday Live. In Abuja, Ismail Musa, NTA News.
Drugs, arms and insecurity is the focus tonight. It's Tuesday Live, and Ismail Musa's background sets the tone for the takeoff of the program tonight. At some point, our phone line will be open, and please, if we are true to you, go straight to the point, don't break my rule, raise your concerns, ask your questions, and our panelists will address them. You can also be part of the conversation tonight through our social media handle on Instagram, Facebook, and Cool at NTA News. Well, I'm being joined tonight, and also in the course of the program tonight, we shall be going to about 5 centers: Maiduguri, Lagos, Kano, Nasarawa, and Oka, all in keeping fit with the issue tonight: drug, arms, and insecurity. What connection to the issue of stemming crimes in the country? I'm being joined tonight by former Minister of Communications and lawyer Adebayo Shitu. Welcome to Tuesday Live.
It's my pleasure being here. Thank you for inviting me.
Dr. Law Mefo, social and forensic psychologist. Good to see you on the program.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting me.
From our Maiduguri Network Center, Professor Ibrahim Omara, International Relations and Strategic Studies. Good to see you on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Of University of Maiduguri, International Relations and Strategic Studies. And joining us via Zoom in Lagos is Aliyu Umar Babangida, CEO, Goldwater and Riverside Consults. Welcome to the program. With you, Aliyu Umar Babangida, let's get your opening thoughts. Connections of drugs and arms to the state of the nation's security. What do you make out of it?
Can you hear me?
I'm just saying that the connection of drugs and arms to the state of the nation's security. What do you make out of it?
Actually, if you could put it in the way the average viewer will understand, the engine oil with which the different component parts of the acts that render us insecure are being executed. By the acts that render us insecure, I'm talking about banditry, kidnaps, terrorism, militancy, armed robbery, and a host of others. Drugs and small or light weapons are virtually what you could call the facilitators, key facilitators, effect multipliers of these acts of wanton crime and violence as we have come to, as we have come to experience them and see them in the country today. So that's just putting it briefly.
Thank you. But back here, now, from what he has said, a number of persons will be asking drug trafficking. The first leg on this program, we looked at the revived onslaught on drug in the country. We looked at the component of trafficking and the component of drug abuse habits. But we keep asking drug, arms, and insecurity. How do they connect from his perspective? Let me take it.
Well, it is, trafficking in drugs becomes a very big business because it is an illegal thing. I used to have a brother who used to say, if drinking alcohol, for instance, was not outlawed by God, perhaps a lot of people wouldn't resort to it, because alcohol majorly is supposed to be not sweet. It's supposed to be, and is something that seizes part of the proper functioning of your brain and all of that. So if it is that bad, even with ordinary alcohol, how much more with drugs which really destabilizes the proper functioning of the brain system? For those who are encouraged to get into criminality, they require what we lawyers call Dutch courage. Dutch courage is brought about when you have, when you ingest drug, illegal drugs which are harmful. When it is ingested, you become you have this braggadocio. You think, yes, I can kill, I can do this, I can maim, and so on. And to do that, ordinary fisticuff, will not get you to achieve that destructive objective which guns, would enable you, would facilitate for you. So for those who, once you have drug, the next thing is you want something which would enable you to achieve, the negative objective. Of course, the people who ingest drug don't see those hellish things as being negative. They think it is an objective which they want to achieve, so that they can be known to have the power to destroy, they have the power to do the impossible, to have the power to do the unexpected. So from drug, the next thing is you want to look, for arms. Of course, arms are arms too are unlawful, particularly when you are not licensed to have them. So just like, having access to, drugs, hard drugs, is illegal, is unlawful, so are arms, whether light weapon or small, they too are unlawful and illegal. So one illegality leads to this next illegality, and then ultimately to criminality, which itself, is an illegality. So there's a nexus between them. You cannot have one without having the other, And if you look at what is happening, the other, I think early this morning I was watching, a film where somebody had stolen, had lifted in the shop, engaged in shoplifting. And two people, a woman and a man, they were arrested and they were struggling not to release what they had stolen. Definitely that they cannot be sane minds. Because once you steal and you are caught, that it is not something you expected to have done. Any sensible person would let go and perhaps try to run away. But the two of them, different films, were staying on, struggling to retain what they had illegally taken, from different shops. I mean, certainly that must be the result of, hard drugs.
Okay. Therefore, let's take your perspective. Drugs and arms, they are direct relationship with crime.
Yeah, certainly there is a nexus, between the three: drugs, arms, crime. And, society has a way it organizes, reinforces, regenerates itself. And every member of the society tries to fit in. And where you cannot easily fit in, you experience basic frustration, right? How you respond to that frustration is the problem here. And that is the concern of psychologists. Many would turn the anger of the frustration inwards, some would turn it outwards. Aggression must come naturally because you can't find a way around the problem you have. It starts from small impressions. When you were just a boy, you can't attend a party until you have taken, a shot of something, right? It grows from there. Peer influence and all that. It gets to a point where you now begin to apply that same solution to bigger problems. To answer your question more directly, the nexus between the three, it begins from, like I said, from those small impressions. It comes ultimately to the point where you come, to direct confrontation with the authority figures of the state. It starts from the family. You start having problems with your parents. Your father, for example, is an authority figure. That defiance, it starts from there. And because you needed to confront those problems, and you don't have any better approach to doing so, you resort to aggression. And to be able to really aggress and get what you want, you need to, more often than not, confront obstacles that are really overwhelming. You need to take something. In the mind of the youth, the drug comes handy in trying to alter that state of consciousness to make the obstacle appear smaller, conquerable. This is very fundamental. Let me use myself as an example. Growing up, I tried my hands on marijuana. I took Igbo, that's what they call it, right? I took Igbo, and look at my experience. The first time I took Igbo, I appeared taller. And people before me appeared smaller. This is very important. And if that is the experience of every other youth that tries his or her hand on a drug, you can see that truly, physically, the objects you see before you are altered.
So how do you connect that to crime?
You connect it to crime because if you see arms, for example, as enablers, right? An enabler is what helps you to get to the point you want, right? Aggression is fundamental. That is what is at the base of what what is really propelling what a psychology would want to call motivation. But because you are inadequate in yourself, you need to get something to help you to get to the point where you can take the reward that you are fighting for. Arms could be the fastest, the surest way out. Because an armed man, if somebody that is armed walks into this studio, we will abandon what we are doing and take a cover. That's a fact. That will show you the strength of the arms. Now, drugs helps you to get to arms. That's the point here. Drugs will help you to get to arms because it will remove the fear of the consequence of holding that weapon which is outlawed. Do you see the problem? That altered state of consciousness, the reality is altered. It is something you can now manage. So, as one who is ordinarily weak, you have now become strong. That is why we call it false courage, because it is not real. And again, it can help you to conquer in your own mind what is an insurmountable obstacle. But the consequence after you have used the gun is where the problem comes, because the state will now come to hold you responsible for illegally possessing, killing with it, and all that. All this will come into a mix and give the trajectory that there is a connection between drugs, arms, and insecurity. That's it. So you need to look at that deeply, separate them if you want to have an enduring solution.
Okay, let's go to Professor Omara in Maiduguri. I watched you listen copiously to Aliu in Lagos via Zoom and the last two speakers. The whole worrisome scenario is it that it came from somewhere, or it is just an existential problem that happens when once you get involved?
Thank you. You see, the nexus between drugs, arms, and insecurity are a sort of intricately connected. Drugs is a substance that have been consumed as a food that affect body structure and function. And it has been in use for a long time. In fact, it antedated human civilization. But the concern here is the drugs people tend to take as a result of attention deficit disorder or attention surplus disorder. But in whatever case it may be, we have two circumstances to consider. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime had a very nice survey that came out with a comprehensive report that gave a very gloomy picture on the state of drug in Nigerians. And from that report, they said 1 in every 7 persons in Nigeria between the ages of 15 to 69 years have drugged or had involved in taking or administering medically unprescribed drugs, which is more of a psychoactive substances. And out of that, you have about 1 in every 4 are female. And from that, again, the drugs were also classified as cannabis, as pharmaceutically endorsed opioids, as well as the non-medical use of cough syrup containing codeine and other substances. But the point you are trying to make by linking the drugs and the arms is what makes people to indulge in the act of drug consumption. So the consumption is either what you call drug abuse or drug addiction. Now, if it is drug abuse, it is medically wrong for people to engage in self-medication. And gradually, perhaps by taking certain drugs that were prescribed by the medical doctors on their own, will lead them to habitually develop the tendencies of being addict to the particular substances. And then if this becomes highly perennial, it becomes drug dependence. And you know, psychologically, these people tend to be much more different from the mainstream of the society. They feel highly alienated, they feel highly sidelined, and they tend to create a sort of social caste and social categories amongst themselves. And whatever way, that is the only way that they can use to serve as a means of survival. The political history in Nigeria, particularly the recent one, had already indicated that most of the vectors of the proliferation of these drugs could be traced to electioneering campaign, within which some of these drugs, particularly the cannabis and the pharmaceutical opioids such as tramadol, codeine, and morphine, tend to be much more scarce in pharmaceutical chemists as a result of these drugs being used to lure political thugs to cajole and suppress passive political opponents. And after election, these peoples were abandoned. And as a result of that, they tend to seek for a means to survive by consolidating their position. After all, their functions are completely somehow destroyed malignly. And therefore, small arms is a all-crew portable, direct fire weapons of a caliber of less than 50 millimeter, which can be easily concealed. And this is also having capabilities of defeating higher armor. The saturation of the small arms and light weapon in our territory, backed by the huge proliferation of drugs that have accentuated our young people, the aversion of Nigerian society by the small arms and the light weapons tend to challenge the state act actors, particularly the security forces, in overcoming, because the weapons that they tend to use in order to bring this under control were already in possession by people that they wanted to monitor, supervise, and control. So both of them are armed, and as a result of that, it may lead to certain unforeseeable tendencies. That is why we are talking about kidnapping for ransom, oil bunkering, sabotaging national infrastructure, terrorism, and cattle rustlings. Besides, we are a federating structure, and Nigeria is a federating state. And the diversity or the plurality of the country, if have not created a very excellent source of social cohesion, there are certain elements that tend to instrumentalize these diversities by creating dissents against certain ethnic groups, certain regions, certain religious bodies, and others that may need to create a market for the flow of these small arms and light weapons. That is vertically. And horizontally, even from within communities, common crises that could be controlled by traditional rulers or by the conventional police within the jurisdiction of the divisional police office cannot be controlled as a result of the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. And perhaps even detachment police or column of the military will be taken more hours before they subdue the resistance level of those that were already armed by these small arms and light weapons. So the nexus between drugs and insecurity, one is independent variable, the other one is dependent variable. It is the drug that lead to the quest for the arms, and at the same time, arm would also be used on the other pipe in order to search for the drug, because the drug is going to be the motivator, the arms will facilitate to create the insecurity paradox that we are talking about the nation. So the insecurity, no doubt, is accentuating and perhaps continue to persist by probing so long and challenging the capabilities of the Nigerian armed forces and other security forces as a result of the availability of these dangerous weapons in our midst.
Thank you so much, Professor Umara. Very close to it is, before we go to Ilu in Vazum in Lagos, is the case of Chidinma Ojukwu. It's trending all over the country, various versions, but NTA had an exclusive with this young 21-year-old Nigerian. And the entire thing links to drugs. Let's take a listen to an excerpt of it before we go to Aliu for a continuation of this conversation tonight.
Drugs and arms proliferation are two major crime routes that draw strength from each other, with consequences that usually lead to insecurity in the society. While a disarrayed mind caused by drugs get easily indoctrinated for crime commission, availability of illegal arms in circulation, on the other hand, serves as tools to carry out evil intents.
It is because of the proliferation of firearms that there is a rise in violent crimes. So it's a matter of serious concern for us.
Basically, our major policy thrust in civil defense revolves around the enhancement of national security. We have to collaborate, we have to cooperate to win the war.
The duo have escalated from local crimes to encouraging both local and global terrorism.
There is a lot of banditry, kidnapping going on around the nation. Some of the kidnappers are said to have requested victims' family to bring in hard drugs as a means of ransom.
With regards to our contribution to reducing the incidence of drug abuse or proliferation of arms in the sub-region, it has been a collaborative one.
Most of the insurgencies, if the military raid their hideout, they used to find some hard drugs alongside with them.
What then is the way forward to curbing these challenges in the society?
We are working assiduously to make sure that we mop up arms and reduce the concentration of arms.
Parents, it's high time for the religious leaders, our traditional leaders, to come to have better play. Our teachers too are supposed to be models.
We are applicable in terms of drug demand reduction. And this has to do in terms of the prevention and, of course, treatment and rehabilitation of people who have developed drug-related problems.
We have been assiduously doing the campaign in Borno State and the Northeast as a whole, because it's a very serious menace to the society and the whole of the nation.
To ensure success in the fight against this menace, they said stakeholders and relevant agencies need to work cohesively to dismantle the crime network by enhancing border and interstate security to checkmate the infiltration of drugs and arms.
That report actually came from Maiduguri. The report I actually call for is the exclusive interview by the NTA with Chidinma Ojukwu that deals with the issue of drug and crime. Can we have that report, please?
Crime is not evenly distributed. Same for drug abuse and its ability to blur the lines between reality and illusion, sanity and depravity. Out of the 14.3 million Nigerians who are into illicit use of drugs, 77%, constituting about 10.6 million, abuse cannabis. Out of this figure, Lagos State and Southwest Nigeria have 22.4% burden.
There is no area of Lagos that does not have a drug joint.
The nation's commercial capital is also a staging area for growing crimes such as rape, armed robbery, traffic robbery, cultism, and of late, drug-induced murder. Any doubt about the link between drug abuse and crime is wiped away by the open confession of Chidinma Ojukwu, a 21-year-old undergraduate who blamed the influence of hard drug for the murder of Super TV Chief Executive Officer Michael Yusufu Ataga.
Brother for smoke and also roofies together. So that's what we took.
While such drugs, as mentioned by Chidinma, may be too expensive and beyond the reach of many addicts, other variants with equal devastating effects, including codeine, diazepam, and tramadol, are in circulation, ruining lives.
It's a social menace that we need to curb because we know that generally drug abuse, drug misuse have bad influence on individuals who administer these to themselves.
Experts are indeed worried about the growing influence of substance abuse as a factor of insecurity in the country.
These people that are into banditry and all those things like that, they are always high.
These days we have seen, we have recorded many cases that were actually triggered by drug misuse or drug abuse.
Although there is increased awareness on the negative impact of illicit use of drugs, these experts believe that members of the society must join the campaign by being vigilant and promoting values that can serve as incentives against drug abuse.
That was the report from Lagos, and the last on this segment is the one from Kano.
A global health and social problem that has transversed across socio-economic, cultural, religious, and ethnic boundaries. Vices such as violent crimes, armed dealings, and drug-related problems are among contemporary security challenges bedeviling the country and manifest mostly amongst youth and, in recent times, young children. Kano State, due to its population size, provides a ready market and a fertile ground for criminal activities, trafficking in, and the abuse of drugs. The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, in Kano, continues to strategize and make giant strides in carrying out raids, creating awareness through public lectures and sharing of pamphlets, embarking on roadworks to sensitize on the dangers of drug abuse.
At any time a bandit is apprehended, 3 out of 4, you find out that they have drugs in their possession, which goes to show that these bandits actually use drugs, which underscores the fact that violent crimes are mostly committed under the influence of drugs.
From July 2020 to date, the agency has seized more than 80,000 kilograms of illicit drugs, with a total of 286 persons arrested, and located 3 cannabis sativa farms in Gwarzo, Ambata, and Ngogo local government areas. Kano State Commissioner of Police Samuel Ashwa Ibudiko says From the month of February 2021 to date, the command has succeeded in recovering about 33 rifles, 317 knives, 998 packets of tramadol, 14 cartons of fake drugs, and 13 bags containing 217 parcels of cannabis sativa, as well as arresting of 2 Boko Haram suspects, 88 armed robbery suspects, and 49 kidnapping suspects.
Strategies are really put in place. We have anti-dapper squad, we have anti-kidnapping squad, we have anti-narcotics, and at times we call for meeting of security agencies to get their input as regard to checkmating crime and criminalities in Kano.
As stakeholders continue to work round the clock to stem these tides, the fight against drug trafficking, drug abuse, violent crimes, and armed dealings requires the participation of all, because every society thrives only when criminalities and other social menaces that could threaten peace and security are controlled.
Got courage, false courage. 3 out of 4 abuse drugs, drug abuse, drug addiction. Let's go to Lagos, where Aliu Babangida joined us via Zoom. Aliu, listening to all this, as an expert in security, how significant is the role of drugs in relation to insecurity in the country?
A significance, and that significance itself is a function of 3 things, 3 virtual symbiotic situations or relationship. And the first one, as you have said, is drugs, then arms, then somewhere in between linking the 2 is youth. Youth, yes, indeed, youth. Anywhere you find a proliferation of drug abuse, and you find a proliferation of small arms or light weapons, you almost always find the biggest users to fall within that age bracket we refer to as youth. And you will also agree with me, answering your question directly now, that no nation has, is, or will ever be greater than its children. I repeat, no nation has, is, or will ever be greater than its children. And if you look critically and very objectively and also dispassionately at what is happening in our country, particularly around and within our youth, you will know that our future is threatened as a country. I recall a while ago, or some few years ago, some 3 young boys drowned a 4th one who was their friend. They went out to swim, and somewhere, somehow, this idea to drown him just appealed to the 3 of them. And drown him they did. The chances are they were on drugs. Somewhere closer in history again, a young man, a promising young man, seemingly, saw it wise to garrote, by garrote, I mean strangle, a young girl and behead her when she went out looking for a job. Closely on the heels of that, we saw another young, very promising girl who actually killed a man in an apartment. She was picked up about 3 or so days later, and she was just unfazed. She was just okay. The way I profiled Chidinma from the kids and the video footages I've seen, she doesn't seem to see anything wrong in what she's done. She's just calm, she's cool. And the chances are, again, she did it under the influence of drugs. So the way drugs, on the one hand, is eating away at our youth. Nigeria has a big problem with her future. And one thing is, where you find active, exuberant youth, driven by what I want to call the effect of drugs, then weapons become toys in their hands. The drugs, when taken, suspend what you call the logical mind. Having suspended the logical mind, these youth are now open to what you can call autosuggestion, repetition, hypnosis, and you see them just stick to whatever instructions you give them, and they just go do it. And having done it, they may not even be able to recall what they've done after the effect of the drug has worn out, which I believe is the case of the younger Chidinma Ojukwu. So drugs and weapons and youth seem to have a holy trinity right now in our country. And the way it is going, as I have told you, that no nation is or will ever be greater than its children. If something very decisive is not done, then believe you me, we may end up with a generation of youth who see drugs and arms as normal and will raise children who will come to see that as normal. Then you can imagine what Nigeria of 10, 15 years' time will be like. It's a national security alert. It's a big problem indeed.
So how do we resolve this, Debayoshitu? So invariably, it means if we knock off drugs, criminality, arms, crime will drop?
Certainly it will drop, certainly, because, I mean, a lot of the things they do, particularly by way of criminality, no sane person would engage in them. It wouldn't appear sensible to do. It wouldn't appear logical action to be done. Like I said, drugs have the effect of providing Dutch courage. You know, it creates scenarios that you think these are normal things, when ordinary, sensible people will know that these things are not normal. He just gave the example of Chidinma Ojukwu. After 2 or 3 days, when she regained her senses, she could not even believe that she did that. She was regretting. And I mean, she started talking of a future that has now eluded her. You know, so I think the first thing to be done, because we already have that problem on our hands, is for government to empower the more the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency to ensure that they are properly trained. They have all the training in the world that they will require to deal decisively with production of drugs, with business, those who do the business of drugs, and those who consume it. You find, I mean, the other day I was in Kano. You know, I went for a marriage and, you know, I saw, you know, some beggars, young adults who were begging. And I wanted to give them money out of pity. And my hosts, you know, important people in Kano were saying, don't give them money. Because if you give them money, they would use it on drugs. So that problem is with us. So the first thing is we should empower the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency to do much more than they are currently doing. I agree they are doing well, but the wellness of their performance is not enough, you know, to stem it. Number two, they must ensure that, you know, those who cultivate it locally, those who import are brutally dealt with. You know, it is very, very important. Then government must also ensure that they establish rehabilitation centers. Every suspected victim of drug abuse must be taken off the streets and rehabilitated. It is a national, you know, emergency that government must deal with. Number three is the Nigerian Customs Service must also be empowered, because a lot of drugs, these drugs are imported through all kinds of, you know, stratagems, you know. So it is important that the custom itself must be specifically reinforced for the purpose of dealing with, you know, discovering potential importation routes of, you know, drugs. I think also that our religious, you know, leaders must also be engaged, now by government. We should, we should know the potential, the potentially positive role that religion and, sermons and all of that can play, in stemming the tide of drug abuse. For now, it doesn't appear that, religious leaders of either Christianity or Islam have been sufficiently, recruited, to join in the fight against drug abuse. It is important that we get them because a lot of people, believe it. Of course, school managers at all levels must also be involved in, ensuring that, the fight against drug. Because, you see, if we feel that because I am not concerned, because none of my children is engaged now, your child or any of your relatives could be a victim of those who consume it. So it becomes a national problem. We shouldn't see it as, oh, I'm already immune, none of my family is involved. If none of your family is not involved and you could become a victim of those who consume it. So these are some of the strategies that I think that, government must, the same attention that is being, put into fighting insecurity, which is the end result, of drug abuse and so on. We must also pay, the same attention to ensuring that from the very beginning, we prevent it, because it's often said that prevention is better than cure.
Okay. Therefore, looking at this, most times I see drug abuse as heightened corruption, because like Adeba Ashitu said, within the religious sect, we have people who do drugs. Now, let's liken this whole thing to an election. INEC in Nigeria is the official umpire for elections. If all resources are deployed and on the day of election, the electorate refuse to come out for election, would there be an election?
There won't be.
So if NDLEA is empowered to check all this and the people are not involved, will it work?
You see, the scenario, the picture you painted is apt, I must admit. And one thing is clear. The panelists, both here and out there, Zoom and from Meduguri, all agree that there is a connection between the three variables or factors that we have identified. If you narrow this whole thing down to finding what you call solutions, right? To be sure that our elections are done without drugs, that our national life, normal social life, is lived without the obvious, promiscuous influence of drugs, it is possible. I'll tell you how. You see, there is something General Marwa is saying at the moment. The new helmsman at the NDLEA. He's talking about exchange of information to save lives. What does that mean? That comes across to me to mean that he's talking about prevention, like my big brother Shitu here has said. Prevention, getting people to really understand that these are the consequences of indulging. You see, growing up is very challenging. As a psychologist, I can tell you, and it's verifiable, research-based, that growing up, even up to the point of young adulthood, you still have what we call identity crisis. You are yet to resolve so many things, career, even understanding who you are, the society in which you live. And this period is very dicey, very, very tricky, because you will now see that the young adults, the adolescents, and those who are just exiting puberty and so on and so forth, are trying to resolve so many crises. And the society itself is not really ready or equipped to help them to understand who they are, what they should be doing. And in the final analysis, what do you have? They fall prey to peer pressure, peer influence. It is their friends in school that tell them what they ought to do. And woe betide you if you fall into the hands of the wrong people, Look at the case of Chidinma that is the most recent. If you run the profile, even though I don't personally agree with the linear story she told, it's more than that as far as I am concerned. But we can pick enough from what she has said already. Drugs cannot be divorced from her action, no matter how we look at it. Both on her own part and on the part of Ataga, who is gone, and from whom we can no longer get anything to enable us understand more what Chidinma is saying. Drug cannot be removed from what is going on. The society is not ready. So empowering NDLA, not only NDLA, empowering NOAA, National Orientation Agency, empowering the states coming to the party, understanding that they have job to do. Beyond the religious institutions, the mosques, the churches, we need to see the schools getting back to the growth. The schools are no longer what they used to be. When we were in secondary school, for example, what we went through then is no longer what I see. I have a daughter who is just graduating. That means I watched her through primary, secondary, through university, to the point that it's not exiting the university. The things I saw is no longer what, could be said to be what we went through that really saw us to become what we are today. The youth of today are no longer prepared to wait for tomorrow. They believe that everything will have to happen now. They want the best of life without lifting a pin. They are not prepared to do no work. This is wrong. We have no national values anymore. Things have crumbled. We need to return to the drawing board. It's not just a function that must be left to the government alone. Government alone can no longer do it. We are all involved. It has to start from the family. For me, I believe that where to even start is the family. We need to get the family right. We need to get the family to take charge again. How many parents are in charge of their children, really in charge? Do you know, there was a time Franco Rize of NTA here was asking, do you know where your children are? Do you know what your children are doing? Do you understand that? Those questions, very fundamental. Many of us don't know where our children are. That is why the parents of Chidinma didn't know that she hadn't returned to school since UNILAG resumed. There was no check. There is no follow-up, no follow-through. And you see, when we talk about Chidinma, Chidinma is just a metaphor. For me, we have millions of Chidinma in our youth of today because drugs have become a clear and present danger, and they cause across. Let me tell you my ultimate fear. Even those who will bring the solution have become part of the problem. I saw a bill with House of Representatives talking about legalization of marijuana. No matter the benefits of such a bill, this is not the time to bring it up. We have a problem, we have a war on our hands. And they're talking about legalization of marijuana because of the economic benefits. Marijuana has destroyed the vestiges of Nigerian society. We can't talk about it. We can't talk about its positive contributions to our economy now. We can't afford it. We need to stop marijuana. It's no longer a cigarette. Let me tell you, the most abused drug in Nigeria today is marijuana. Here in Abuja, I will take you to at least 20 places you can buy jots of marijuana for 50 naira, 100 naira. It means that virtually everybody that wants marijuana can have access to it. It's as cheap as cigarette now. And again, you have variants of it. You have all forms of it, it's sort of converted through mixtures of many things, not just marijuana as a single drug now. It has some other additives added to it, 2-3 drugs combining to give you all manner of things, and they bear names. They call them tush, they call them all manner of psychedelic, crazy names, that in fact, if you take just one drug is enough to induce addiction. This will give you an idea of what I am talking about. Why you need to get down to the drawing board and agree with General Marwa. Now we need to get the children to even know that you can't experiment. That a drug, just one sniff of heroin is enough to hook you into it. How many of our youths know this? Many of them have already gotten addicted because they weren't told.
Okay,
and growing up, they were impressionistic. So we need to do more now. We have to return to the drawing board.
Okay. Actually, the chairman NDLA last week on the program had emphasized that the position of Nigeria is a no-no to legalization of cannabis.
I agree with him.
Let's go to Professor Umara. Professor Umara, from what you've heard so far, the future is threatened, and our security expert from Lagos says it is a holy trinity that has to be attacked. Where lies the place, unholy trinity, sorry. Where lies the place of value mindset reorientation in all this?
That was the observation that I made earlier on the attention deficit disorder. As my colleague there in your studio lamented on the overall patterns of functional approach in the attempt to tackle, particularly stemming within the context of the family level. You see, people tend to emphasize on the state institutions. Family is one of the basic institutions charged with the responsibilities of procreation and the training to instill values, norms and values of the society. And in a situation where the families are not all that organized and are not responding to their tasks and responsibilities. And perhaps as a result of the contemporary challenges, but whatever challenges that we have, we should ensure that we have created or procreated our own kind that need our own attention. Paying money, taking them to school, giving them what they want is not what is supposed to be done. Monitoring, supervising their peer groups, their movement, and where they may be. I said attention deficit disorder because there are certain families, as a result of the economic challenges, don't even have time to look over to what the wards are going through. And then attention deficit hyperactive disorder for those that are already in economically advantaged status or position. Because of their engagement, they were not even within the community. Not to talk about monitoring the activities of their own children. And perhaps this type of people sometimes do travel with their spouses. And as a result of that, the children are left only with the caregiver or the home manager, whatsoever you may call. So those people who are taking care of the house in the absence of the parents may have some questionable characters and attitudes that were transputed or transmitted into these children that are under their custody. Apart from the family again, the neighborhood and the society also have their own responsibilities, particularly in form of African setting. We are our brother's keepers. In the absence of a one member or a head of the family, another head of family will look over the activities of the children. However, nowadays, some people don't even want to hear people are taking disciplinary action against their kids simply because they are not their biological children. Away from the neighborhoods and the society, you have a very huge ungovernable spaces. I said ungovernable because in northern Nigeria, perhaps throughout the Federal Republic of Nigeria, we have community governance. And there is a disconnect between the state and the society. The disconnect is as a result of the emphasis or emasculation of the traditional institution. Here in Borno State, we have a structure of a hierarchy that runs from the unit up to the top, the center headed by the shehu. You see, the unit of a community monitor, supervise the activities, the social interaction, the economic interaction, perhaps interaction. The monitoring tend to have cascaded into stages within which people tend to take action, either by the community, by the religion, or by the political head, the Bulama himself or the Lawan or the district head that is popularly known as Aja. So in the absence of the traditional institution, it is also becoming very much cumbersome. So the nexus between the family, the neighborhood or the community, and then the traditional institution are so sacrosanct in order to connect the society with the state. And then anything that goes beyond this society, it is now going to bring in the state for them to take action. I know we are surrounded by 3 different countries, and the Nigerian border is very porous, as you already know. The proliferation of small arms and light weapons, and then the saturation of these hard drugs may not be unconnected with the nature of the porosity of our border. And institutionally, we have the State Security Council that is made up of the membership from the armed forces, the police, the civil defense corps, and other security establishment alongside the traditional institution, with the Attorney General of the state as a member who is also serving as a chairman. And that the executive governor is the chairman, the Attorney General is the member of the Security Council. Based on the recommendation of the Security Council, worried by the flow of these drugs, the Borno State government came up with drug control strategy, within which a committee was established, led by the Attorney General and the Commissioner of Justice, in collaboration of the Nigerian Drug Law Enforcement Agency, the Nigerian military, the Nigerian Police, Custom, Immigration, Civil Defense Corps, and other security networks, supporting the NDLA in fighting to bring it to an end. That is within the context of the state. And at the national level, yes, we are fighting war in the Northeast. We are facing a sort of ultra-modern warfare, a warfare without definite territory, without definite identity, and we don't even know the sources of their weapon. But at the same time, the Nigerian military is trying its own possible best. But the nature of the continuity of challenge to the Nigerian state and of the Nigerian armed forces may not be unconnected with the availability of the drugs as well as the flow of the small arms and the live weapon. But what I can suggest, as the panelists already observed in the studio there, is that the government should reconsider empowering the traditional institution. These are members of the community, resident in the community. They know everybody in the community. They monitor the behaviors and attitudes of these people. They monitor the activities in the schools, in the mosques, and in the churches that we are talking about. They know what the pharmaceutical chemists are selling. They know what these drug dealers are doing in their own community. And as a result of that, to see what is happening, they are recommending and giving useful information to the state should there be any need for them to take action, if that action is beyond the community level. So the attention surplus also is having its own, because some people may tend to over-pamper their children, and as a result of over-pampering, you see people that are highly affluent tend to engage in it, and then they are beyond the reach of the community because the communities are not empowered. But for the attention deficit, for the youth that are from the under-privileged community or society or family, theirs is, as a result of what they had earlier observed, fit in, for them to compete, for them to be accepted by the peer group they test. And then you have another one, which you cannot exonerate even the adults, apart from blaming the youths, is that feeling good, to feel good. How do you feel good? You take something. Why did you take it for you to have a solace, psychological solace? What were attitudes and your behavior toward the works? Who are you? What position are you occupying? Must you take drug before you sleep? Must you take drug for you to feel happy? Then if we are doing that, we are role model. And you cannot stop the youth from doing it. And again, to perform better, you think for you to perform better, you want to take drug. You are creating market. And then again, for you to feel somehow to relieve a sort of pain, such drugs such as the what do they call the pain relievers and others. People used to take them unnecessarily without medical prescription. And this may not be attributed to the young group, but is attributed to the established people who frequently take drugs that affect their body structures and function. In Maiduguri, And in Damaturu, we had very huge cases of kidney failure, and that led to the moving into action by the state government to see and to ascertain the factors responsible for the rampant kidney failure in Borno and Yobe. And if you see the outcome of the investigation, you will be surprised, and it is very unfortunate. So herein you have the drug addiction and dependency, vertical and horizontal. Vertical between the people who are taking it, who are induced to commit crime based on the availability of small arms and light weapons that threaten national security, and then the people who may not take the arms but themselves are drug addicted and dependent.
Thank you so much, Professor Umara. We'll take a break. When we return, we'll go to our slants to the program, the International Connections. Is it really about us? And truly, if drug is eliminated, will crime be reduced or eliminated too? We'll take a break. When we return, the program continues. Stay with us.
Sometime we never see the kind things Nigeria they make. We no reach waiting with the shop later. We even they use $22 billion take bring things from Obodo Imbo every year. To bring better come inside we Obodo Nigeria, now so our government arrange them import policy come. Now, for us to survive, we must to learn how to feed we serve. So far, that plan don't nearly work finish. Sake of CBN, we stand gidiga to support local farmers and small market people. Our plan to give 10 million people work with 12 products under 5 years don't dey pure. We fit to do am. Make we buy Nigeria to grow Nigeria. Call your banker today for more information on how to get involved.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest asset the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth entrepreneurship support, yes, by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youths, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria. Pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying tuned, and our phone lines are open. Also, our social media platforms are available for you to be part of the conversation tonight. Like I said, Instagram, Cool, and Facebook at NTA News. Well, let's go to Aliyu Umar Babangida. Aliyu Umar Babangida, yes, the institutions are weak. Yes, the borders are porous. Is it possible too that there's a possibility that there's some kind of international connection, conspiracy to all this to ensure that maybe Nigeria is imploded for our structures to be completely destroyed? Okay, I hear that the signal is down now. Let me take that to Oscar. Let me begin with you.
Yeah. For me, I think it's a very hard question.
Really?
Yes, because my heart, right, says yes, but my head is saying no. I'll tell you what I mean. You see, what you call drug cartels, right, caught across nations. They are not doing it because they are targeting Nigeria, but because they find Nigeria a transit or destination corridor. Simple. They do the same with any ready country. So it's not that they are doing it because they are targeting Nigeria as a country. That's the point here. What that means is that since Nigeria is, both an origin, a transition point and a destination, it behoves those who are in charge to understand all this and know the drugs that tend to pass through Nigeria and where they are headed.
Sorry, just a second. Our first caller tonight is calling from Lokoja, Kogi State, Sunday. Hello, Sunday. Hello, Sunday. Okay, we lost the call. Please conclude, please.
Yeah, so the point I'm making is, first, let us not play the victim here. Yes, we may be victims, but it's not really targeted. It may be an achievement by default. It's not really planned that Nigeria should be. But because we have made ourselves available, the market is here, whether we like it or not. So those who deal in drugs, they see themselves as businessmen and women. So where they find the market, they go to. What you now have to do is to ensure that they don't use your base as substrate, as market. That is very fundamental. Then I also talked about transition. Nigeria is a transit corridor for drug cartels. In fact, there was a time that the seizure, the drug seizure that was recorded in Murtala Mohammed International Airport, and Nnamdi Azikiwe here, was unprecedented. And if you really check, you will understand that that amount of drugs was not actually meant for Nigerian market.
Okay.
It was moving, it was passing through.
When we come to you, Augustine is calling from Umuahia, Abia State. Hello, Augustine. Please conclude.
So the point is there. If we see this, we'll understand that if we are now a transit corridor, what are we doing to block that gap, that opening? That is one. If our market is there ready for them, you gave an example with the voice pop we saw from Kano. You can see the population. It is millions of youths who can be lured into using this as a way of escaping, pains of poverty, pains of frustration, and so on and so forth. What are we doing to really get them to understand the danger of what they are relying on as a way of escaping the problem they have? You see, the basic definition of drug is poison, first and foremost. However, when administered in right proportions, can be beneficial. But here we're not talking about drug administration in the right proportions. We're talking about abuse. People are using the default, what you may call, yes, the default. Rather than use the drug for its original use, what it is really meant for, you are using the other side of it, what you may call the side effect. That is what you are now relying on. You see, why I say this is this. Even marijuana can be taken under medical prescriptions as a painkiller. But that is not the reason over 90% of Nigerians use marijuana.
Okay, let me hold you there.
That's a problem.
Let's take this caller from FCT, James. Hello, James.
Am I on to the Tuesday live?
Hello, James. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Am I on to the Tuesday live?
Go ahead, please, James.
Yes. My name is James. I want to appreciate all of the guests so far in the program. Yes, I beg to disagree with some of the points that have been made so far. You see, this country, there are lots of problems that needs to be tackled aside drugs. In taking it from there, you see, most of our politicians, for instance, they vote for ministerial appointments, after which they want to be governors, and after which they want to go back to the Senate. So at the end of the day, You see these people making a huge sum of money without using it to impact the lives of the youth. You see, the youth, if you want to talk about drug taking, it can be broken into three different aspects. One is an average youth that has been addicted already, an average youth that out of frustration decides to fall back to drugs, and also a youth that on his own, because of the free will, because of his easy access to inflow of cash, has decided to go the path of drugs. You see, for instance, using myself as an example, while I was very busy before I lost my job, I wasn't involved with drugs as such. But right now that I have a great deal of time as an applicant in search of job, I am always lured to meeting friends who are also jobless, and we decide to do drugs, which was unlike me before now, while I was still very busy. And then there are some that, as a result of the fact that they have easy monies to themselves, they decided to do drugs, and most times you find out that they are either sons of politicians that have free monies to lavish around, or otherwise. And they find the final set now are hoodlums who have decided to be used by the politicians, by the elites themselves. Because if you look at it very critically, drug is something that is done by virtually everybody, across every aspect of the society, the youth, the elderly, and the rest of them. Why doesn't it affect them as such? It's because they have the money. So as soon as they get these drugs and they indulge fully in it, the youth that are seeing them, they are looking up to them, they always come to them, see them doing some of these things, and they wish to do the same lines that they do. And sometimes without these drugs, the youth cannot kill themselves for them during electoral positions and the rest of them. So if you look at it very critically, I do not want it to be attributed fully as a youth thing that these drugs keep on going. Because if the government of today wants to stop drugs fully, definitely they can decide to stop it. But if drugs peddling keeps on going, the government is aware of it.
Thank you very much. I think that is the most I take from James.
He said, in Abuja, there are places you can.
Well, James has made his point. James calling from the FCT. He cut across, and he's trying to say that we shouldn't say it's only youths. But quickly, before I allow you to respond to that, it's a discussion between an adult and a youth regarding drug use. The adult said, but why the drugs? The youth said, because this is how we roll. Everyone has their poison. You talked about poison. If you are not on reef, you do codeine, or cocaine, or heroin, or speed, or AZT, or ecstasy, or rohyphenol, or fentanyl, or meth, or OXY, or worst case, you inhale glue and get your high. So this was a conversation between a youth and adult, and this was the reply by the youth to the adult. Now, from perspective of James' reaction, he has said it's not just about the youths, the political class is involved, the very rich are involved, the very poor, the jobless are involved. And from this conversation, how do you encapsulate it?
Well, the truth is, I know that no self-respecting person, even the politicians who have been indicted, they themselves would not use drugs. But they engage people, and it's like you are equipping somebody that you are sending on an errand. You know that ordinarily, if the guy is in his right senses, he will not be able to accomplish, the objective which you want him to accomplish. So, they give them money and they buy drugs and all of that for them. I think we must also look beyond, the ordinary in saying that, like one of our sages, political sages, had earlier said, that the youths you refuse to educate today would be your albatross tomorrow. If you look at, say, various, communities here and there where drug use and abuse and addiction are highest, you find that people who are engaged in this are largely uneducated people who are very hopeless, who do not have hope that they could have, any future. I recall with, regret that in Ibadan, where, I come from, we have a community called Koronu. Koronu means we don't think.
We don't think.
We don't think. That is a community of able-bodied young boys and girls who are largely illiterate, who are largely jobless, largely uneducated, completely hopeless. But I want to believe that our political class must also take responsibility for this, because when you have people growing up, this is a country where polygamy largely, is in place. People give birth to any number of children that, they, are able to give birth to, either deliberately or, by mistake. Government has not seen the need to ensure that every child is educated.
Let me hold you there just a second, sir, and take this caller. Sajiri is calling from Katsina. Hello, Sajiri.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead, please.
I'm very glad to have you people, you gentlemen, as people who are, from the perspective from what I had the discussion, I'm very glad to have this. My contribution is that I want the government, the message from the government is that the way to curtail this drug abuse and other, because drug abuse is the backbone of everything, every crime. So the first thing is to block the importation, the production, and every illicit substances that considered to harm the psychological nature of people. From there, then, if this is stopped, no, there will be no addicted somebody. Nobody can get. If you are addicted, you cannot get it. You are blocked to have it. You see? So this is from the government. Once this menace is blocked from entering into the country, distributing, arrest the people distributing it, arrest the people importing it, arrest people producing it. There is no way the people who are indulged into that societal vices will find themselves into it. And finally, those people should be brought closer and interviewed to see that why they entered into such vices. So that if there is any rehabilitation the government can take, it can take further action. Any development starts step by step.
Thank you so much, Sajiri. Sajiri called from Katsina. Well, he has faced a couple of issues there.
Yes.
But backbone of crime, every crime is drug, and government should ensure that they block the production and importation of anything that is linked with it.
Well, yes, I was saying that the political class must also take responsibility, because when we have a limitless and uncontrolled production of human beings, as it were, this population is growing, no adequate facilities or policy to ensure that every child born to our country is educated. Government needs to take responsibility of educating every child up to a level whereby they are not only educated, but they are also provided with skills so that they don't grow up to become unskilled and to become hopeless people. That is one arm, which I believe the political class must take responsibility, and it is not, it is high time we forgot about, paying lip service, to the provision of quality education, which must not only be accessible but must also be compulsory, so that every child, before a child becomes 18 years, he ought to have gotten to a level of education, a level of skilled acquisition, such that he will be, have hope that there could be a tomorrow. If you leave people uneducated and unskilled, and when they know that they don't have a future, of course, they resort to things which will make them happy. They want to get high, through the other thing which, unfortunately, I must also say, in order to help the authorities to, look at this thing wholly, there was a situation, somebody told me, of a situation where a political thug was arrested with drugs. And one of his masters had to go and, beg the police to release him. Quantum of, illicit drugs, marijuana, and the policeman was said, the DP or the DC or somebody was said to say, okay, we agree to release him, but we cannot allow him to take back all of these drugs. We will take part of it. I mean, for what purpose? Either for them to also participate in the consumption or sale. I mean, when you have security forces who are not patriotic enough, who themselves may have been involved in consumption, then that becomes a double jeopardy, because those who are supposed to arrest, the perpetrators are also unwittingly involved in it. So even within the police force, even within the customs, within the NDLA and other security agencies, we must ensure that there are constant, perhaps medical, examination to ensure that nobody who has any pint of blood in his system is allowed to remain, because otherwise they would compromise in fighting corruption. Okay. So these are issues that we also have to look at.
Okay, let's take this caller from Enugu. Nwanko. Nwanko is coming from Enugu. Hello, Nwanko.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, nice to be part of the program.
Okay, go ahead, please.
I think the whole issue is we should try and save this country called Nigeria. Saving the country called Nigeria, let's start from children of 10 years now. Then we know in the next 10 years we can stop illicit drug. If we want to tell ourselves the truth, everybody, 83% of Nigeria, both the adults, both the young, are into drug. Even the politicians. How can you tell me somebody will use one and said, okay, because I'm a politician, I want to face my opponent? You go and buy drugs, especially this something called Igbo. So if we want to save this country, let's start educating those children who are 10 years now. In the next 10 years, we will now eradicate the drugs, because if we don't do that, and we are saying in the television that or in the social media that we want to stop illicit drug, we are deceiving ourselves. Let's start now from the school, from the church, from the mosque, educating us. They say the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. If we want to stop and save this country from all this, let's start now educating our children, we the parents. Because some parents will say, your son, your daughter is in the school, for 2 weeks you've not seen him or her. You cannot even ask him, maybe before you come back, your daughter would have slept, your son would have slept. You don't know their whereabouts. So please, please and please, I know Buba Marwa, I know him very well, as a governor of Lagos State in the military. He can do well if he's well and properly equipped. Let's shy away politics from everything we are doing in Nigeria. That's our problem. Look at saying you want to go and pass a bill that marijuana should be sold and should be legalized. What? For God's sake. Don't we see to countries like India or countries like Pakistan? They make routes to Nigeria because they know that we have many loopholes. So please, let's educate ourselves, especially with the parents. If we say we want to continue from the elderly one, those ones are gone. But if we start now from children of 10 years, in another 10 years, we know that we will eradicate drug, illicit drug in the country proper. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wanko called in from Enugu. Is our Zoom guest up now? If it's not up, we'll go to Professor Umaro. Professor Umaro, I want to take this reaction from a guest to you. The guest is concerned about the international collection. Cartels across the world will invade porous countries like Nigeria. The question we ask is, the borders are porous. We have customs there. The borders are porous. We have police there. The borders are porous. We have immigration there. So why would the borders be porous?
You know, these are issues of what we call outsmarting the state. States are institutions, and every state is supposed to manage its borders properly. But human beings are also constituting certain interests, and as a result of pursuing that interest, they need to take advantage of perhaps very huge traffic that may weaken the ability of those in border management business to uncover all that they have sealed. Remember, when we were saying the nexus between drug, arms, and insecurity, we were saying that the drugs themselves were made in separate fashion that cannot be easily detected. And the arms that we are talking about are usually small arms and light weapons, portable weapons that can be disassembled, and then from there will be concealed with certain materials and goods. So the porosity of the border dovetail the nature of manpower resources that we have to man our own borders, corresponding with the necessary equipment that will help them in order to checkmate the movements of these people. Again, the immigration officials at our border, the customs, the police and the military are not adequate to man Nigerian borders. For example, in the northeast, here in particular, we were bordered by Cameroon, Chad, and Niger. And Chad and Niger are Sahel, very open and porous, and we were connected through the Lake Chad. And it spanned more than 1,000 kilometers between Nigeria and Niger, and between Nigeria and Cameroon. But then we were directly connected with Chad. And we were not saying that these countries are sources of the illicit flow. It may be by air, it may be by sea, and it may be also by the land. So manning the borders will imbibe on the government's ability to enhance border monetary equipment, to increase the personnel, to give them adequate training, and perhaps for us to reactivate Border Development Commission. Because in most countries where such long longitude and latitude of borders exist, there are certain communities that were already developed by the governmental agencies in order to ensure to serve as an intelligence gathering outlet that tend to signal any unusual movement of either goods or persons to the main security network. And that will bring in even the members of the road transport workers, and then the laborers, and then the ordinary merchants and the traders. All of them will be involved like in form of intelligence gathering for them to alert the conventional security for them to swing into action. We said actionable intelligence. So saying that, going back to the international connection, you know, in international relations, nation states cohabit in an anarchic system. And it is anarchic because the survival of the nation states, their consolidations and development is the fundamental aspect that determine nation states' national interest. And since it is a sort of survival of the fittest, any nation that may tend to have potentials of development, particularly in terms of manpower, and having in mind that there is an overall global agenda of reducing population, and Nigeria happened to be targeted as going to be the third largest country in terms of population in the next 10 to 20 years. The population is not all that managed. We were divided along ethnic, regional, and religious cleavages, and we are not all that cohesive, and anything can come in. And those that are engaged in the what we call the merchants of debt or the agents of lethal activities tend to target markets that could be easily penetrated. And if you ask ordinary Nigerians as to the reason why they engage in that, you have already observed, particularly the caller that seemed to be much more with the panelist outcome of discussions, particularly in Abuja, in Enugu, is talking about the nexus between the young people and then the elderly people. So the nexus is only two. For the one, being young, you are in a period of self-discovery, competition, and fulfillment. And then for the elderly, they have already arrived. They wanted to maintain the status quo. For the elderly and for the young people, it is the environmental forces that determine their success and the failures. So when the dream of young people, particularly the graduates or those that are having the skill, are shattered, they tend to be prostrated, they tend to be traumatized, and as a result of that, they resort to all sorts of things, transferring their aggression from the perceived source of their prostration. And for the elderly, they have already reached certain stages. They wanted to consolidate and build on that, and through the instrumentalities of using the very agile younger population. And the wind blow between the elderly and the young is, go and do this for me, I'll do that for you. When you get it, you leave it. When you leave it, what will it become? For instance, in Borno State, most of the young people who are supposed to be occupied in agricultural production, of course, Borno State is one of the greatest agricultural belts. Most of the productive areas of the state were already displaced for the first 6-7 years, and no any farming activities are taking place, and people are prostrated. Apart from farming, the businesses of fishing, apart from fishing, the businesses of pastoral life, all these are completely mortgaged. People who were living in their ancestral homes were forcefully displaced. They are now living in the internally displaced camps and in the host communities. And they constituted a very huge vulnerable segment, both of the younger generation and of the elderly. They lost hope. They wanted relocation. And this led to anxiety disorder. They are looking for a social solace, for them to forget about the trauma that they have undergone. And that will create a very huge market for the proliferation of the drug. And the same young people who were displaced in agricultural production, in fishing, and in commercial activities, who lost any means of livelihood, may be lured into the conscription of the insurgents that will tend to multiply the insecurity situation of the particular country. So in either word, a scenario, if I give you 3 scenarios, that will suffice to make you to conclude that these people are not taking the drugs on themselves. One case is from Goza local government. A man in his own house were attacked by these insurgents. That man escaped. His wife and a daughter were abducted. The wife and the daughter were married by a person. That one man that married the mother and daughter impregnated them and had baby for him. 2, a retired principal's children, 2 male and a female, were taken into a van. While the Nigerian Air Force jet and helicopter were on patrol, they stopped over because of the intense insolation of the sun. He lost the 2 children. One was just one just finished secondary 6, and then the other one with JSS 3. They all lost their life, and he said, I am glad that they were not used to carry gun against people. And his daughter that was taken away, he cannot recognize when he was rescued by the Nigerian Armed Forces, and he came back with a baby. And another man in Damboa local, this one is from Jikwa, the other one was from Damboa, and 92 years old, with 9 children. All these children were married, adult, married, and most of them are married with 3, 4 wives with children. And his crime was simple. Do not cooperate with this insurgent. Do not conceal their weapon. Expose them wherever they may be. They brought and lined all the 9, and then all of them were shot in his presence. And he is now contending with the over 16 widows of his late children and then the grandchildren. You can imagine the level of anxiety and the disorderliness these people are undergoing. And because of religiosity, some may say this is a trial from our own Creator, is a fulfillment of prophecy, that if we are patient, God Almighty will change it for us through the reward of paradise. But there are others who may not take that religious solace. They now resort to consuming the drugs, and that had created a very huge market. So this is only a scenario. When you go to Katsina, when you go to Zampara, when you go to Kebbi, you can see people whose wives were raped in their presence, whose daughters were raped in their presence. And how can somebody feel comfortable to live a normal life while in your presence your daughters and wives were raped? How can somebody feel comfortable when his daughters were abducted in girls' secondary school, when his children were abducted in secondary school, and they were living with these kidnappers for a long period, and we don't know the nature of their own engagement? So the whole issue is, it is not supposed for the younger generation to be pushing the blame on the elderly, or the elderly pushing the blame on the younger generation. We have a problem at hand. How do we tackle the particular problem? Simple. Go back to the basis. Reorient the decadent level of our family value. Go back to the African value system. Go back to the religious value system. Connect the state with the society. The state is completely absent in the society. The absence of the society created the vacuum. The huge had led to the proliferation of illicit activities, among which drug and guns are just few. There are very many things that need to be connected. And the only way to connect is to recognize the setup, the traditional setup, to change the orientation of the political class. We tend to be blaming the politicians. What about the merchants? What about the farmers? The farmers who use these young people in their farmland were the ones that were supplying the drugs that make their performance to be enhanced. So gradual consumption of the performance, inhalation or addiction tend to create drug dependency. So when the cyclical or seasonal employment ended, where are they going to work, and who is going to supply them with these drugs that were already available in the society? It's very simple. Connect the society with the state. Let the society help the state institutions and agencies in order to tackle. As long as these small arms and light weapons exist, there is going to be a flow of the illicit drug. And these drugs may not be necessarily imported into the country. They were produced and distributed from within. For Nigeria, locally, the 2019 United Nations Office on Drug and Crime report, the drugs that were used internationally, using our country as a transit point, wasn't meant for Nigeria, and that was cocaine. And cocaine is least when compared to the Indian hemp, when compared to tramadol and codeine and others. So they are using the ones that are mostly or largely produced from within, whether it is a pharmaceutical opiate, whether it is cannabis, or whether we are talking about the other substances that were locally made, which is outside alcohol and tobacco. So the main issue is, one, we have to accept that there must be an international connection. There is no nation without population. It is the human being that make machine. And a society blazed with human beings tend to have very many talents, and when these talents are harnessed, this talent will challenge existing powers, and as a result of that, these powers may not like you to be stable, and therefore you are going to be used and you are going to destroy yourself. And we were used as a fodder unless we are so proactive by activating the National Orientation Agency, by activating all the media outlets, by controlling the social media platform, and other issues of national concern for us to see as ourselves as one. Anything that happened in Enugu concern those in Maiduguri. Anything that happened in Maiduguri may concern those in Ibadan and in Lagos. When we continue to see ourselves along this way, I think we cannot allow any international interference to consider us so foolish for them to be experimenting, destroying our generation, because these young people are our assets. They are to take over from our place. We were trained by people. The level of commitment that we have is no longer existing. Why is it for us to actualize ourselves? If it is actualization, what do we lack? Let us go back to the basis. Reorganize the family. Reorganize the society. Reactivate the traditional institutions that engage in monetary. Link the state with the society. And then from there, we can see what will happen. But for now, the international connection is obvious. Very, very obvious, because we are competing in an anarchical international system where nation-states pursue the issues of their national interest, and the basic prerequisite for Nigeria is its survival and consolidation. And Nigeria's survival depends on healthy, prosperous, and youthful young people. Unless and until our young are prosperous and useful, Nigeria will never continue to develop in the League of Nations.
Much Professor Ibrahim Umara, International Relations and Strategic Studies, University of Maiduguri. He joined us from our Maiduguri Nexus Center. It was nice having you on the program tonight. Okay, back here, well, as good as he has allowed him all the time, he has confirmed to that the international connection is, so what way forward?
Well, the way forward
is not lost.
Yeah, for me, the Prof also identified some of those factors that we have already implicated in our earlier analysis. You see, for me, I believe in the foundation of life, which is childhood. And where do you anchor childhood? In the family. We need to get back to the family. We need to re-anchor the family. It is through the family that you establish proper socialization of the individual. You know, to teach the basic values of a normal, functional human society. Some of these values are being eroded. They are lacking, essentially, in our national life as at now. Then the next level will be the schools. You need to do something about the schools. Because when the parents fail, it is the schools that auto-correct. Where you do not get the schools in order, then there is a problem. You know, what you call, corrective mechanisms in schools, punishment, for example, is a contentious issue in Nigerian school system. And you have this tendency that you can't even punish a child. If you dare that, the parents may come, fighting and insulting, doing order. We need to really do some basic reorientation to understand how much of, for example, punishment should come back into the school curriculum. It's very fundamental. We were punished growing up. We served our seniors, and so on and so forth. And I think that we came out the better for it. We need to re-examine those fundamental values that we enjoyed growing up and see how much of that can be brought back to re-energize, reinvigorate the school system of today. We don't have much of that. Then, of course, the governmental institutions. Earlier, I talked about the new approach being introduced by General Malwa in NDLA. I think he's right in saying that, look, let's talk about education. Essentially, you need to do something fundamental about education. Education not in the classroom alone. Both what you call you may call it formal and informal, okay, and so on and so forth. We need to do continuous education, and bringing in this issue of drug education into the curriculum. By that I mean it should form part of civic education. The children, somebody, a caller, I think from Enugu, was talking about teaching the ones that are just 10 years old. So in the next 1 decade, there will be 20, and we have some hope. He's right to a very considerable extent. I think that what we need to do is to bring in into primary school education curriculum the dangers of drug. People don't understand what the drug really does to the body. Yes, you feel high, then what is the collateral damage it does to you? People don't know that. When you say that drug essentially is poison, but if it is taken in the right proportion, it may be good for the body. But if every drug in the long run has collateral implications. So those who are supposed to take certain drugs to be able to function, it becomes a medical condition. But going to abuse the same drug because you want to feel high, you need to understand the consequences. Because you are talking about things like marijuana. Let me tell you something it does to the system. You see, marijuana, Igbo, as we call it in Nigeria, if you take a jot of Igbo, it will still be traced in your blood in the till the next 10 days, 10 to 12 days. What does that tell you? And some people take it daily, 2-3 times a day. It accumulates, and it chips away nerves of the brain. And you see, in the brain, any nerve that is lost there is not regenerated. Okay, people need to know. You need to get in touch with medical doctors.
Let me hold you there.
Yes.
And
let them ask you
to this conclusion. It's all about arrest. At least now we have the Nigerian Correctional Service metamorphosing from Nigerian Prison Service, correctional. Can we look at the perspective of educational curriculum, value mindset revision, reform?
Prevention is better than cure. I mean, that says it all. Number one, you prevent people from even getting access to all these, unlawful drugs, all these hard drugs. That we must do. We must uproot the supply chain of, drugs. I think that should be the first thing. Number two, for those who are already engaged in it, there must be rehabilitation. It's very important. No amount of money will be wasted in trying to recover those who are about to be lost permanently. We have, in our society now, we have several people who are mad. Most of them got their madness through, abuse and addiction to drugs. Because the effect of drug on the brain certainly is very devastating. So that must be there. The punishment component, it should really be the last thing. If we are able to, prevent access, if we are able to ensure that it doesn't come in at all, and for those who are, growing it, Igbo and all of that in Nigeria, we must be very ruthless. Government must be very ruthless in running after them and ensuring that they are stopped from it. I mean, it's very, very important. In some countries, production of, illicit drugs are considered, are met with capital punishment because the consequence of it, it is worse than armed robbery. Armed robber may have just a victim, but somebody who produces and distributes a drug, he has the whole society, the whole community as his potential victim. Because one person is addicted, the consequences of his action are negatively impacting on the entire society.
Okay, thank you so much, gentlemen. Adebayo Shitu, former Minister of Communications and lawyer, just nice having on the program.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
And Law Mefo, social and forensic psychologist. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my brother.
To our guests who join us via Zoom in Lagos, there will be lost signals. Aliu Umar Babangida, CEO Goldwater and Riverside Consult. Just nice being on the program. We looked at drug, arms, and insecurity in Nigeria. Thank you for your calls and thank you for your contributions. Don't forget to support the NTA in the onslaught against rape and rapists to be a star. Bye-bye.
You've been kept by God's mercy.
Join us in this transforming conversation of life, faith, family, service, and leadership with Professor Tom Adaba, a veteran broadcaster and pioneer Director General of the National Broadcasting Commission, as he celebrates 80 years of grace. The date is Wednesday, the 30th of June. The time is 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. You can register via Zoom with meeting ID 812-796